This is the 2022 BMW iX. It's one of 3 EV models you can buy from BMW. It's expensive, luxurious, and it's extremely weird. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Shifting Lanes. My name is Hanson, and for this video, BMW has loaned me this iX to test for a week. This one is finished in the Sophisto gray paint. It has the Amido perforated leather interior, and with all of the other premium and handling packages, various trim upgrades, and delivery, this iX xDrive 50 model can be yours for $95,720. And after a week's worth of driving and charging on the go, I want to give you a tour of this midsize EV SAV, or sports activity vehicle. And I also want to give you my personal rating on the exterior, interior, technology, power, and overall driving experience. So if you want to go into any of those sections, feel free to jump through the chapters along this video. There's a lot to talk about in this car, so let's get started with the review. And I want to start with the most polarizing aspect of this car, the outside. One of the things I love about EVs is that car companies are taking super bold steps in their design. These cars don't have an engine, so it doesn't need an air intake, it doesn't need to exhaust, aside from the active vents that's necessary to cool the battery. So instead they need a slippery and aerodynamic surface for better drag reduction. So for BMW to have a giant grille like this is purely an aesthetic choice, and it is a lot to take in. That grille used to be traditionally known as the kidney grille, but now it's more like the beaver teeth or a pig nose grille. It's a bit shocking to look at, but after looking at it for about a week, it started to look normal. I'm willing to bet that people's reception to this giant toothy grille is going to improve over time as well. Just take a look at the Lexus big hourglass grille. They got some heat for it in the beginning, but it looks totally normal now. But until then, this is going to look awful to some, and it's without a doubt the only bad thing I could say about this car. For now, this is a car that you might want to pull into a parking spot all the time. As for the profile, the iX looks like a blend between an SUV, a minivan, and a wagon. The roof has a sleeker look with the floating roof design and frameless windows, and the $500 titanium bronze option helped break up the monotony of the side. This tester comes with the standard 20-inch aero wheels, and they are spaced 118 inches apart, which is a fairly long wheelbase for the mid-size segment. Normally that's a concern for maneuverability, but this tester comes with a dynamic handling package, which comes with rear steering, and that makes the overall turning circle very small. And at the rear, the iX looks sleek and futuristic with its slim LED taillight design. And since those taillights are entirely located on the hatch, when you open it, there's another set of taillights that also work when you hit the brakes and the blinkers. Most likely that's a safety requirement sort of thing, but still very strange to see. Which brings up some of the other strange things I found about the exterior of the car. For example, unlike most other EVs, there's no actual front trunk or frunk. Actually, you can't even open the trunk very easily. There's 2 latches that you have to pull, one on the left-hand side, and then you have to pull this one on the right-hand side, and only then you can open the hood. So what happens if you need to do some of the more routine maintenance things that comes with normal cars, like filling up the washer fluid? Well, you can press on the BMW badge, and that will open up exactly for that reason. So design-wise, I'll give this a rating of 8 out of 10. This is a sharp-looking SUV, or SAV. The LED headlights and the taillights, along with the copious amounts of titanium bronze, adds a dose of modern and luxurious style. The car looks good, but it's hard to look past that grille, at least for now. But I'm willing to bet that it's going to grow on you. Next, let's jump inside, and the iX has one of the best interiors that you could find south of $100,000. This tester model comes with the Amido perforated leather seats, which has a high-quality quilted leather design. Although to some, this may look like a bare mattress or maybe your grandma's couch. Regardless, the seats are very comfortable with heating and ventilation features. The driver's side also has massaging capability, and I like how there's plenty of adjustability. To quickly make adjustment to the seating position, you could do so with the sliders on the side of the door. This is probably the most gaudy piece of ornamentation throughout the entire car. but I actually like the way it looks, and it's a small reminder that you've paid a pretty good chunk of change for this car. And to open the door, there's a button to unlatch the door. Should you lose any power for any reason and this electronic latch fails to open, there's a mechanical latch down here that will act as a backup. The rest of the front row looks very impressive. The dash has a concept car-like simplicity to it. The infotainment and digital cluster screens are combined into a single curved panel, and then it's propped up with some legs like a simple TV stand. It's a different design direction compared to other cars which try to integrate their screens into the dash as much as possible, but I think this works and it gives a floating screen illusion. The hexagonal steering wheel is a little bit much in my opinion, but I can see how the designers wanted to give the driver slightly more visibility of the instrument cluster without fully going to a yoke design, which is a lot worse. The buttons and scroll wheels work pretty nicely, and they offer a quicker and simpler solution compared to the gesture controls, which I'll talk about in the tech section. The steering wheel is heated as expected of a luxury car, and to go one step further, even the armrests are heated. The center console has a really nice combination of glass switchgear and this beautiful wooden button panel. And right below that, there's a couple of USB-C ports, your cup holders, and this giant crevasse where the transmission tunnel would normally be. But since this is an EV, you don't have a drive shaft going to the back. But my most favorite part out of this whole front row is the fact that I could put my phone right in this section. And it's not sitting awkwardly in some cup holder somewhere. It's just easy to look at even while you're driving, even though you're not supposed to. As for the second row, there's a lot of legroom at 38.9 inches. I love how there's venting on the center console, the B-pillar, and also by your feet. The outboard seats are also heated, and there's more USB-C connections back there than there are people in the second row. And to make things just a bit classier, BMW calls the glass ceiling a panoramic eclipsing roof. So since there's no cover, the glass can turn slightly opaque to help block out the sun at the press of a touch-sensitive button. It's one of the cool party tricks of this BMW, and it helps justify that really steep price tag. And in terms of cargo space, once you open the liftgate, you'll find 35.5 cubic feet of space with all seats in the upright position. Release the 60-40 split second row, and you'll get 77.9 cubic feet of cargo space. With this liftgate open, and also when you open the doors, here's where you get a glimpse of that structural carbon fiber reinforced plastics that's used in many places throughout the car. That's pretty necessary stuff considering this car has a pretty high curb weight of over 5,600 pounds. Overall, I'm giving the interior of this iX a 10 out of 10. This is a stunning vehicle, and for $100,000, this is the type of interior that you should expect. And BMW, they delivered. Now let's discuss the technology found in this BMW, and there's a bunch of features. The infotainment runs on the iDrive 8.0 system, and it comes equipped with navigation. You can use voice input, you can use this iDrive rotary dial, or you can use touchscreen if you want to. The software layout looks good, and if you're comfortable with how BMW's menus work, it's going to operate pretty much the same here. Basically, the left column is one section, while the remaining 90% of the screen to the right is another section. It takes a little bit to get used to, but once you're comfortable with it, you'll be flying through the menus. And in case you need more methods of input, there's also a gesture control that works surprisingly well compared to other cars. You can point and rotate clockwise and counterclockwise to increase or decrease the volume. You can point your thumb to the left or the right to seek between channels. And when you put your 3D camera view on display, of course, there's a 360-degree camera view system in this car. You can put your index finger and thumb together to spin the camera around the car. Now, if you're someone who's very expressive and use your hands every time you talk, you will trigger this more than once, I promise you that. Of course, just like a proper luxury car should, this also comes with wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. And the wireless charger below keeps that experience purely wireless. Moving on to the instrument cluster, as expected, this display is also fully digital. You can toggle through different display modes. You can show your total range, which also includes your worst and best case range scenarios. You can see what your vehicle sensors are seeing. there's plenty of options to choose from. And I like how there's a cohesive design between all of the displays, including the very large heads-up display. There's also a bunch of LED lighting throughout the car to the point where it may seem a bit excessive. There's LED ambient lighting within the cabin, along the doors, and there's also puddle lights. And as for safety technology, this iX is very well equipped with standard safety features like blind spot warning, frontal collision warning, and rear cross traffic alert. There's also an active driving assistant, so there's pretty clever lane following and adaptive cruise control system. When it comes to the sound system, this tester comes with a standard Harman Kardon unit. It is very good. Now, I'm no audio expert and I have very average ears, I think, but the listening experience is very immersive. And given that this is an EV with no internal combustion engine, and also the road and wind noise are greatly minimized, more on that in the next section, by the way, you kind of pay attention more to the small auditory details. So when I cranked the music all the way up, I didn't hear any sort of like weird rattles through the speakers. The experience sounded like a very good pair of headphones. Now, if you're the type that needs something a little bit better, then it's probably best to get the Bowers & Wilkins stereo upgrade, which is another $3,400. With it, you'll get 4D audio, 30 speakers, and even more audio power. I think EVs are cars that can greatly benefit from a better stereo system, again, because there's not a lot of sound that creeps in from the road and the wind. But if you have average hearing, I'd say the standard Harman Kardon unit is already good enough. So for technology, I'll give the BMW iX a rating of 10 out of 10 because it's equipped with so many impressive features and it all just works. Sure, there's a lot of features here and there that may be gimmicky and unnecessary, but I like how it all works smoothly. Next, let's move on to the power department. This iX xDrive 50 is equipped with 2 electric motors, one for each axle, and it outputs a combined 516 horsepower and 564 pound-feet of torque. That results in a brutally smooth 0 to 60 time of 4.4 seconds. Since you have 2 electric motors driving all 4 wheels, you get an immense amount of grip. And the driving sensation is very similar to other EVs with dual motor and this level of horsepower and torque. With the iX, you'll get a 105.2 kilowatt hour liquid-cooled lithium-ion battery pack, and that's located along the floorboard, and that can deliver up to 324 miles. Just for comparison's sake, the trio of EVs from Korea, the Ioniq 5, the EV6, and the GV60, they have up to 77.4 kilowatt hour pack. And if they have all-wheel drive, then their range is going to be between 248 to 274 miles, depending on the model. So that sort of tracks with the iX having worse MPGE at 86 city and 87 highway. It's all most likely because of the heavier weight. This is around 800 pounds more, and also more aerodynamic drag due to the size. Now, 324 miles is a pretty comfortable range for an electric vehicle. On an optimal day, that's about 4 to 5 hours of driving at 60 miles per hour. Chances are you're going to be taking breaks in between anyway. And that's where BMW claims that you can add up to 200 miles of range during a 30-minute charging session. And that's made possible by the fastest chargers you could find right now, which is a 350 kilowatt station. They're still hard to find, but using a standard 150 kilowatt charger at the 2 Electrify America stations that I used, I was able to add about 50 kilowatt hours of energy in about 30 minutes time, which is about half the range or about 150-ish miles. Of course, there's the iX M60 model, which has even more insane power at 610 horsepower and 811 pound-feet of torque with a 0 to 60 mile per hour time of 3.6 seconds. However, that has a shorter range of 288 miles. So in my opinion, the iX xDrive 50 is really the best one to go with because it's already very fast and it has better range. So in the power department, I'm giving this car a rating of 10 out of 10. Now, if you've driven an EV, then chances are you know what it's like to drive this car from a power perspective. They're quick, we know that. But with this BMW, you can take advantage of the fastest chargers out there. and the fact that there's a healthy battery in this car that does wonders in reducing your range anxiety. Finally, let's talk about the driving experience, and I'll start with the ride quality first. Out of all of the cars that I've tested, and I've tested hundreds of them, at the time of this filming, which is January 2023, this BMW iX has the best ride quality out of all of them. Electric vehicles inherently have better ride and handling qualities compared to internal combustion engine cars. The weight is more centrally balanced between the wheels. The fact that there's no engine eliminates all sorts of noise, vibration, and harshness. There's no transmission because it's a direct drive type of layout, so there's no acceleration hesitation. And I think because having a low drag coefficient means better overall range and efficiency, these EVs fare better with wind noise in general. This xDrive 50 has the dynamic handling package, which means that it's riding on air suspension, and it's also ride height adjustable. So combine the smoother ride quality from the EV architecture with a great suspension setup, and throw in the sound deadening materials at a luxury brand level, and you'll get a very serene experience. As for handling, this handles like a typical EV would. Low center of gravity and a great planted feel. However, at the limits, the heavy weight of the iX start to test the quality of your tire gripping abilities. With higher friction tires, I think this SUV might scare some Mazda Miata owners at the autocross. With rear steering, the iX has that nimbleness of a shorter wheelbase car in slower speed situations and the stability of longer wheelbase cars at higher speeds. Meanwhile, the steering response itself is quite good. I think the dynamic handling package is a worthwhile package to include. And when you go into sport mode, you can customize various aspects of the driving characteristics like the drivetrain, the steering damping, driving dynamics, suspension firmness, and very important here, you can set the seat bolsters to hug you a little more in sport mode. So for the driving experience, I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. The BMW iX is an expensive car and it feels like one. I think the ride quality is the best that you could get south of $100,000, and the handling makes this very fun to drive. Overall, there's a lot of 10s here with the exception of the exterior styling, and depending on the person, the styling may or may not be as important as other aspects of the car. So taking BMW's grille design choice into consideration and weighing everything else, I'm giving this BMW iX xDrive 50 an overall rating of 9.5 out of 10. This is a really impressive car to drive, and there's plenty of weirdness and quirkiness to it. I thought in the past that when we were going to an EV future, that it was going to be very dull and boring, and it's going to lead to cars that are soulless and lack character. But it's quite the other way around, because having an EV, it allows the design space to be a little bit bigger for engineers and designers, that they can introduce all of this quirky and interesting things. And you've been able to see that with this car, what Hyundai is doing with the Ioniq 6. If this is where BMW is heading with their EVs, then I think they're going to have a really strong future. I want to thank you guys so much for watching all the way till the end. If you've learned something, please consider hitting that like, subscribe, and also that notification bell so that you can be notified anytime I make a new video. Let's end it right there. My name's Hanson. This has been the 2022 BMW iX xDrive 50, and I'll see you in the next one.